The story begins as we meet a boy named Haru, who shut himself in after being bullied in high school. He stayed in his room for years, but one day, he is suddenly reincarnated by a goddess. Haru realizes he must have died, and the goddess tells him he will be reincarnated into a new world filled with magic, and she will give him overpowered skills to help him in his new life. She tells him to enjoy his second chance at life, and Haru just wants to be able to live a quiet and easy life. The goddess reincarnates him, and he finds he has been reincarnated as a baby. He's the son of the king, and he's born with the royal insignia. The king is excited to see how strong he is, so he has his advisor perform a magical assessment. His crystal ball glows as it examines Haru's power. The king thinks he should be strong, because his mother was the hero who defeated the demon king. But it turns out he is only level 2, and his advisor notes he also has no elements, so he can only use barrier magic. The king can't believe this, wondering how they could have such a useless son, and they think it would be a problem if other people found out. So they both come up with the idea to say he died during childbirth. Haru can't believe he is going to die after he was just reincarnated, and the king orders for him to be disposed of in a faraway forest. The goddess panics seeing this, and she realizes she messed up, because she actually made Haru's power level 1002, but the measuring devices in that world don't go up that high, so they don't realize how strong he is. Haru finds himself abandoned in a forest, and he can't do anything since he is just a baby. He thinks about how they mentioned he can use barrier magic, so he decides to give it a go. He imagines it in his mind, and he manages to form a cube. He finds it easy to control, easily changing its size and its form. He tries using it on himself, and it allows him to float in the air. But at that moment, a giant wolf suddenly appears. Haru starts freaking out, but he is protected by his barrier. He picks up a bunch of trees with his barriers, and he uses them to attack the wolf. The wolf is still able to get up, so he decides to go even bigger, picking up an enormous chunk of the ground, but the wolf cries out, and Haru realizes the wolf can talk. The wolf can't believe how strong he is, thinking he isn't normal. Haru struggles to talk, but he gets an idea, and uses a barrier that turns his thoughts into sound. He manages to talk, and the wolf wants to know more about him. Haru introduces himself, and says he was abandoned because his mana level was too low, but the wolf doesn't believe this, because it can sense his overwhelming power, and it thinks he is the reincarnation of the Demon King. Haru decides to play along, and the wolf instantly believes him. It admits defeat, and tells him to just finish her off, but Haru says it's not necessary, as long as she doesn't attack him again. She can't believe he is so merciful, and she swears on her name as a flame Fenrir to keep this promise. Haru bids her farewell, calling her Flay, but the wolf sees this as being given a name, so she claims they have formed a pact, and she swears her loyalty to him. Haru explains he just shortened her name, and wasn't trying to form any pact, but Flay doesn't listen to him. Haru suddenly becomes weak, and he falls to the ground. Flay wonders what's wrong, and it turns out he requires sustenance. He says he needs milk, and Flay ends up transforming into a human form. Haru is embarrassed seeing her naked, so she puts on a suit, but Haru thinks it's just as bad. Flay prepares to give him her milk, but it turns out she doesn't have any. She suddenly hears someone approaching, wondering if she should take them out, but Haru says they should try talking to them first. A man approaches them, and Flay asks him why he is there. The man says he is there for Haru, but Flay refuses to hand him over. The man wonders about their relationship, and Flay tells him Haru is her master. The man claims to be Haru's relative, and that he is there to save him. He reveals he even brought milk, and Haru tells Flay to accept it, but she doesn't listen to him. She wonders why he is coming back for something they threw away. The man claims his wife was once pregnant, but the child didn't make it. So he doesn't care that Haru was abandoned for being weak, and he thinks that every child should have the chance to have a life. Flay is moved hearing this, and the man finds it strange to see a demon crying. They come to a deal, and the man decides to take her in as well, so she can stay by Haru's side. After 9 years, Haru has grown up, living with his new family. He had originally hoped to leave after being weaned off milk, but they were so kind to him that he ended up staying. But his only problem is that his sister Charlotte doesn't get along with him. Flay serves as their maid, and Charlotte seems to like her, asking her to play. Flay says her job is to look after Haru, but Haru orders her to play, so they go outside and Charlotte chases after her. Haru watches them from inside, and his mother tells him not to let it get to him, saying Charlotte is just at the age where she doesn't know how to act around boys. Haru worries the reason is because Charlotte can tell he is actually almost 30, so she can sense he is an old man. His mother thinks he should do something special to show how reliable he is, thinking she will change her mind, but Haru thinks he is no good in social situations. She says that as their heir, he should get out more instead of always spending his time in his room. Haru heads back to his room, and he thinks he should leave before his parents start demanding more from him. But he thinks Charlotte would hate him even more if he took Flay away, and he knows that Flay would never agree to stay behind. We see he has created a clone of himself using his barrier magic, so he can one day replace himself, but he hasn't been able to make it move or talk. His father knocks on his door, and they go out to the yard where his father wants to start teaching him how to use the sword. He isn't interested in learning, but his father tells him that since he has such low levels of mana, he should develop his other skills. Haru wants to just relax, but his father insists he gives it a go. Haru knows his father is an experienced warrior, so he thinks he doesn't stand a chance. He casts his barrier to protect himself, and he charges at his father, even breaking his sword. His father is shocked seeing the damage he caused, and he tells Haru to try and avoid his attack. He swings at him, but Haru manages to dodge it. His father can't believe this, and he says it should have been impossible for anyone under level 30 to dodge, and Haru also finds this strange. We learn that he tried checking his power with an even stronger crystal ball, thinking he could have a level in the hundreds, but it still ended up only showing 2. And he thinks it would be impossible to have a level in the 4 digits, because the highest level in all of humanity was only level 77. So he wonders what powers he was given by the goddess. Later that night, Haru's father tells his wife about the sword training session, but he is concerned that Haru could be a demon. His wife is shocked hearing this, and he mentions that there are secret records where the royal family bred with demons, and there were some who were born with demonic traits. His wife thinks Haru looks just like a normal boy, but they consider why a demon such as Flay is so obedient to him. However, he assures his wife that Haru is still their son, and that he will have a happy life. But Charlotte is shocked hearing her brother could be a demon. We see Haru relaxing in his room, when there is suddenly a commotion outside. He uses his barriers to see what's going on, and we see a bunch of injured soldiers. Haru asks his father about what happened, and his father mentions their lands have been getting attacked by thieves. They found the base of the thieves, but they ended up getting ambushed. His father thinks it's a harsh sight for him to witness, so he tells Haru to go back inside. Flay calls them useless for getting beaten by some thieves, but Haru gets pissed off, telling her to shut her mouth. As Haru walks past, he uses his barriers on the wounded, and he is able to instantly heal them all. The men can't believe it, and Haru's father wonders what's going on. At night, Haru wakes up, and he sees Flay has been waiting for him. She doesn't dare to talk, and Haru realizes she is still following his previous order. He apologizes for losing his temper, and he allows her to speak again. They head outside, and Haru uses his barriers to look for the thieves that attacked his father. He is quickly able to find them, and plans to wipe them out, as he uses his barrier to fly to their location, but at that moment, we see Charlotte watching them as they leave. We see the thieves celebrating their victory, while their boss discusses their plans to return to their homeland. Haru suddenly appears, and he instantly freezes them with his barriers. One of the men tries to talk back, but Haru instantly blows him away. The boss ends up confessing everything, revealing that they are actually soldiers from the neighboring empire. Their goal was to cause chaos in the kingdom, and they even reveal they had someone helping them on the inside. Haru wonders if there is someone after his father's life, but the men don't know anything else. The men ask to be spared, but Haru tells them they messed up by attacking his father, so Flay ends up burning the entire base, and he ends up sending an anonymous letter to his father about what he learned. His father is surprised to learn that the Empire is involved, and Charlotte wonders who took out the bad guys, and he can tell that it must have been Flay's doing. Charlotte suddenly gets up, and explains there is somewhere she needs to go. As she leaves the office, she thinks about what she saw the previous night. She asks Flay if there are 2 Harus, but Flay is confused about what she is talking about. She reveals she saw them leaving, But she knows Haru shouldn't have enough mana to fly, so she checked in his room, and she ended up finding his clone sleeping in his bed. She notes that it didn't have his usual scary aura, so she wonders what it all means. Flay is impressed to hear that Charlotte can sense her brother's strength, and she explains just how powerful he really is, but she tells her not to think too much about it. Flay ends up reporting her encounter to Haru, and he can't believe she already found out about his clone. He decides to set up extra surveillance on her, so he can keep tabs on what she is up to. Over the next few days, we see Charlotte following him around. No matter where he goes, Charlotte watches him, even when he's in the bath, and when he tries to confront her, she just runs away. After a week, we learn that his mother and Charlotte are going on a trip to the annual festival. Haru tells them they should take Flay along, but his mother mentions that Flay hasn't been around, and Haru remembers how he told Flay to intimidate the monsters in the forest, so they don't attack any towns. Later on, Haru's alarm goes off, and he realizes it's the surveillance he put on Charlotte. We see that their carriage was attacked by Imperial soldiers, and Charlotte is carried away by her mother Natalia. The men chase after them, casting their magic, but Natalia manages to block it, but she gets hit in the leg. Charlotte suddenly hears a voice, and she directs her mother to run. Natalia wonders who's giving the directions, but they end up at a cliff. Charlotte tells her to jump, and they manage to make it down by using magic. They end up finding a cave, but Natalia thinks it's too bright to be able to hide. Natalia decides to go out to find the person who is giving them directions, saying they must be a hero of justice. She tells Charlotte to stay quiet, and she quickly heads off. As she leaves the cave, the entrance is hidden by some illusion magic. But at that moment, the soldiers catch up to her. Natalia thinks she can't let herself get captured, so she prepares to take her own life. However, her blade suddenly shatters, as Haru arrives just in time. He gets pissed off at the situation, and he instantly blows all of the soldiers away. He calls out for Charlotte, telling her to take care of her mother, but she is terrified feeling his aura. She realizes it must be her brother, so she forces herself to see him. Haru is surprised to hear her calling his name, and she asks if he is a hero of justice. He is confused by the question, but he decides to play along. Charlotte gets excited, thinking he uses his powers to defeat bad guys, and Haru just agrees. She apologizes for not realizing his true identity, but Haru tells her she needs to keep it a secret. At night, Haru's father receives a report about what happened, and he wonders about the mysterious person that has been helping them. He asks Haru if he has any ideas, but he just says that the person should stay on their side as long as they behave. Charlotte and Natalia return, and Charlotte instantly hugs Haru. She tells him how much she missed him, and their mother wonders when they became so close. Charlotte refuses to explain, but she just says that she loves him now. Haru is happy about this, but Flay seems to get jealous of their new relationship. After that, Charlotte would barge into his room every day, asking to play, and he now has trouble dealing with her because she likes him too much. She wonders what he is doing, and he tells her he is keeping watch with his surveillance magic. She is impressed he can use ancient magic, calling him amazing, and Haru says it's hard to learn since it's a lost magic. But Charlotte mentions that she has seen records about it, and she ends up taking him to their castle archive. Haru is surprised to learn they had such a huge library, and Charlotte helps him grab some of the books. Haru learns that his barrier magic is considered ancient magic, and he is surprised Charlotte has been reading these books. He thinks they would be too difficult for her, but she says that their father would normally read it to her. She tells him to do the same, sitting on his lap, and Haru does his part as her big brother. They read that there are some gods that can travel between worlds, and Haru thinks it sounds like a story from an anime, and Charlotte wonders what he is talking about. He thinks she wouldn't understand, but she insists on trying her best to listen. He explains it as drawings that can move, and he gets excited talking about it, and she wishes she could also experience it. So Haru decides to find a way for them to watch anime. After 2 weeks, Haru manages to get access to the internet from Japan, and he finds that his old Netflix account still works. He creates a kid's account for Charlotte, and he lets her choose what she wants to watch. She picks a show about a magical girl, and she is amazed that the drawings can really move. She finds it amazing, but she isn't able to understand Japanese. Haru thinks it would be hard for her to learn a language, but thinks she should be able to manage since she's still young. He starts teaching her the alphabet, and he is shocked she seems to have learned it after only 2 hours. After another 2 weeks, Charlotte barges in, wanting to watch the latest episode of her favorite show. We see zombies in a city, but the heroes of justice fight them off. It seems she has mastered Japanese by just watching anime, and Haru wonders if she's a genius. He's glad she's having fun, but he thinks he needs to be a good example for her. So he tells her she can only watch for 3 hours a day. Charlotte is devastated, wondering why he would do this to her, but he claims it's for her own good. They have dinner together, and Charlotte seems to be nodding off. Their father wonders what Charlotte has been doing in his room, and Charlotte says they've been busy researching ancient magic, and their mother is happy to hear they're working together. After dinner, Charlotte follows him around, but he tells her she can't watch any more anime for the day, so she should just take a bath and go to sleep. We see Haru taking a bath, and Charlotte ends up joining him. She thinks she should just go to sleep since she can't watch anime, and Haru thinks she is starting to sound like an otaku. She notices the crest on his chest, and she calls it his emblem, saying it's his proof he's an ally of justice. He thinks she has been watching too much anime, but he tells her to keep it a secret, saying that allies of justice must hide their identity. They say goodnight, and Haru goes to bed, but Charlotte ends up sleeping with him, and we see their mother watching them, happy that they are getting along so well, but Haru just wants his own space. The next day, their father leaves to subdue some thieves, and Charlotte worries for his safety. She gets depressed, but Haru tells her not to be worried, saying their father will be fine. Charlotte tells him he should use his powers to fight the bad guys, begging him to go, and Haru has no choice but to agree. She tells him he needs to transform, just like in the anime, so Haru ends up putting on a disguise. Haru gets embarrassed, but Charlotte thinks he is so cool. She wants to go with him, but he says it's too dangerous, making her depressed. However, he gives her a way to watch his heroic deeds, and he quickly heads off. He looks around for the thieves, finding them in a cave, and he uses his barrier magic to seal them in. He arrives at their location, and the thieves wonder who he is. He calls himself an ally of justice, but the men try to rush at him. He's able to easily beat them all up, but he makes sure to go easy since Charlotte is watching. At that moment, his father arrives, wondering who he is. He makes up a random name, and his father wonders if he's the mysterious person who has been helping them out. He wonders what his goal is, and Haru just explains that he's carrying out justice. He gets embarrassed with himself, so he quickly runs away. He can't believe himself, but Charlotte tells him he was super cool, wanting to see him fight again, and Haru can't believe he has to keep doing it. But he ends up making a name for himself, and he becomes known as the Black Knight. After some time, Haru seems to have perfected his clone, thanks to the books from the library. His clone is now able to speak, but it acts too much like him, and it's just as lazy as him. Charlotte wakes up in his bed, and she is confused seeing the two of them. They get called for a meeting, and Haru thinks his clone can go in his place, but his clone refuses, and Haru realizes it's useless. Their family goes out to greet their guests, and we meet the royal prince and princess, Lias and Marianne. Haru wonders if they are his real siblings, but Lias is stuck up and super rude. Marianne tells him to behave, but Lias says she can't boss him around, since he's going to be the next king, so they aren't on the same level. Haru can't believe he is so terrible, but Lias calls him out for staring at him. He knows Haru is only level 2, so he decides to teach him a lesson, challenging him to a fight. Haru thinks it's going to be a pain, but Lias thinks he is afraid, saying he will hold back. Haru checks his level, seeing he is level 9 with a maximum of 40, and he compares it with his father and the princess. Lias charges at him, but he easily dodges him. Lias tells him not to run away, so Haru uses his barrier to protect himself. He lets the prince beat him up, but Lias tells him to fight back, so he instantly attacks him from behind. Lias gets back up, but Haru just keeps knocking him down. Marianne doesn't believe he is only level 2, but Haru's father just calls it a mystery. Lias refuses to lose, attacking with a fireball, but Haru just absorbs it with his barrier. The prince keeps on attacking, but his spells have no effect. He wonders what's going on, and Haru reveals that he absorbed all the fireballs, wondering if he should return them, and Lias falls to his knees. Haru lets him off the hook, and he is just glad it's over. Marianne apologizes for her brother, and she wonders if he is really level 2. Haru confirms that he is, but he quickly excuses himself. As he heads back to his room, he wonders if this incident will cause his real parents to come looking for him. We see Charlotte as she helps Haru look for bad guys to take down. Flay returns, and she also wants to help out, but Haru thinks she will end up causing trouble. He asks her about his other tasks for her, but she claims to have finished everything. Charlotte gets excited, wanting to see them team up, saying that every hero needs a partner. Seeing how excited they are, Haru has no choice but to go along with it. He warns Flay that since Charlotte is watching them, she isn't allowed to use excessive violence. We see the group of thieves as they prepare to check out their haul, but Haru makes his entrance, introducing himself as the Black Knight, and Flay follows suit, calling herself the Crimson Knight. The men are confused, and Flay attacks with her flame, setting them on fire. Haru tries to remind her of his warning, but she doesn't listen, and continues to throw fire, so he ends up stopping it with his barrier. Flay is confused by what's going on, and she prepares to use her full power, but Haru suddenly smacks her, reminding her not to be so violent. She says she got carried away, but she tries to burn them again, and he smacks her again, telling her to head back while he handles the rest. Haru becomes exhausted afterwards, but Charlotte says they were awesome. Flay wonders why her attack didn't work, thinking she'll need to use more power next time. Haru doesn't want to do it again, but seeing how happy it made his sister, he considers it. Meanwhile, we see Lias as he wonders how Haru defeated him when he's only level 2. We learn he was trying to assert dominance as the next king, but it didn't turn out the way he expected. His aide tells him to get ready for the banquet, and he suggests Lias to invite Charlotte to join him on their tour of the fields the next day. Lias doesn't care about her, but his aide tells him it's for his own good. Charlotte visits Haru after the banquet, and we learn he sent his clone to take his place. His clone reminds him that they are the same, so he found the experience just as miserable. His clone can't handle being his double, and it jumps into bed. Charlotte worries for the clone, thinking it will have to go on the tour, but she notes she will also be going, since Lias invited her. Looking at how tired his clone is, Haru decides to be the one to go. Later at night, Haru decides to check the route for their tour, to make sure that it's safe for Charlotte. He finds a suspicious group that looks like they are summoning something, so he decides to go check it out. He rocks up to them, wondering what's going on, but the men are shocked to see him. They prepare their spells against him, but he easily takes them all out. One of the men activates the magic circle, summoning a bunch of skeletons. Haru finds them creepy, but he easily takes them down with his sword. However, they get right back up, jumping onto him, but he easily blows them all away. They keep getting back up, but he notices a crystal on their chest. As the man orders them to attack, the skeletons suddenly turn around, and they start attacking the men instead. The leader summons a huge golem, crushing the skeletons, and it even manages to break through Haru's barrier. He wonders how to deal with it, but he notices it also has a crystal on its chest, so he ends up attacking it, causing the golem to stop moving. The men wonder what's going on, but it also turns on them, and Haru apologizes, saying he stabbed it with his barrier, which overrode its magic formula. Haru ends up capturing them all, and he tries to ask the leader about their objective. The man refuses to talk, so Haru gets the skeletons to dig a hole, and he threatens to bury all of them alive. The leader reveals he works for the Queen Consort, saying they were trying to summon monsters to assassinate Charlotte during the tour. Haru wonders why they would target her, and the man reveals that the Queen is scared of her potential, knowing Charlotte will surpass her one day. He mentions that the Queen was also behind the bandit attacks, but since they failed twice, the Queen sent her personal summoner squad. Haru thinks it's the same as when he was abandoned, and she's doing everything to protect her own position. Haru gets angry thinking about it, and the golem starts to go wild, grabbing onto the man, but Haru stops it just in time. He refuses to lose the people he loves, and decides to go against the Queen, even if she's his real mother. We see Flay keeping watch as the tour takes place. The ride is awkward, but Charlotte tries to cheer Lias up, telling him he shouldn't feel bad about losing to Haru, because he never even stood a chance. Marianne joins in, saying it's not a big deal, but this only makes things worse. Haru tells them to chill, but Lias thinks he didn't even use magic during their fight. Haru explains he can buff himself to get stronger, but Lias and Marianne are shocked to hear this. Haru isn't aware it's a big deal, and Lias wonders if he's a returned demon. Haru doesn't know what that means, and Charlotte explains that when a demon marries a human, their descendants can have demonic traits. Marianne thinks it would explain his power, but she notes he doesn't have any horns, and just looks like a normal boy. Charlotte vouches for the rest of his body, saying it's completely normal, since she's bathed with him, but this just weirds them out, thinking he's a perv. Charlotte wonders if it's wrong, but they just try to explain that it's not common. They arrive at their destination, and they admire a wheat field. Charlotte runs off with Marianne and Lias, while Haru has a chat with his father. Haru poses a hypothetical question, wondering what he would do if the queen was after Charlotte's life. His father reveals he got a letter from the Black Knight when he was delivered the queen's mages, so he knows the threat is real. He knows she sees him as her enemy, but he can't retaliate since she's the queen. Haru wishes she would disappear, but his father tells him the capital would fall into turmoil without her. He explains that the king fell from power long ago, and there are many nobles that try to take the throne, but the queen keeps them all in check with her power. 2 years before Haru was born, the king led an army against the demon king, with the queen Giselle among them, and she took out the demon king by herself. She became a hero, and her marriage with the king was supported by everyone, but she's now trying to take the kingdom for herself. His father thinks there's nothing they can do, unless someone more powerful could replace the queen. He thinks Charlotte will easily become stronger than her, but she's still too young. So he tells Haru to look out for her until she grows up. Flay volunteers to take out the queen, but Haru declines, saying it's a personal issue, so he wants to be the one to do it. He thinks the queen will make another attempt on Charlotte's life soon, so he decides it's time they had a reunion. His mother Giselle receives a report about the failed attempt on Charlotte's life, learning that the Black Knight is protecting her. She throws her drink at them, calling them useless, and she thinks she will need to handle it herself. But at that moment, Haru arrives, instantly taking out her men with his barriers. Giselle wonders how he made it into her castle, which should be protected by barriers, but Haru calls them weak, saying he just broke through them. Giselle prepares to deal with him, and Haru is surprised she can use 3 spells in a row. He gets trapped in a sphere of water, starting to drown, but he uses a barrier to help him jump out. Giselle follows up with ice magic, which Haru is able to defend against, so she then blasts him with her fire magic. Haru drops to the ground, and Giselle starts to gloat, saying he was no challenge, but Haru just gets back up, brushing off the attack, and Giselle wonders who he is. Haru starts to retaliate, attacking with a barrage, and Giselle struggles to defend herself. She thinks he is even stronger than the Demon King, and she starts to run out of mana, but she charges at him with her sword, and Haru fights using his own sword. Giselle gets on top of him, thinking she is unrivaled with the sword, but Haru ends up disarming her. He prepares to punish her, creating a collar around her neck, and he tells her she will lose her head if she tries to take it off. She wonders what he wants, and Haru tells her he has one demand, telling her to keep her hands off Charlotte and his family, warning her what will happen if she disobeys. 5 years later, things have remained peaceful, and we see Charlotte playing out in the snow. Haru finds it too cold outside, so he just wants to go back to his room. He wonders if Flay is cold in her outfit, and we see her shaking, but she claims to be fine. Haru can see through her lie, so he gives her a new outfit, and tells her to speak up if she has a problem. Charlotte tells him about a special move that she thought of, saying she isn't strong enough to use it, so she asks him to try it out. She explains how to do it, and he thinks it's ridiculous, but he can't say no to her. He prepares his magic, performing a chant that he finds embarrassing, and he ends up drilling a huge hole in the ground. Charlotte is impressed, and Haru is glad he could make her happy, but their parents suddenly appear, wondering what's going on, so Haru quickly uses his magic to create the Black Knight, who flies away, and he blames the hole on him, saying the Black Knight was passing by, and showed off his special attack. Charlotte quickly agrees with the explanation, and their father decides not to look into it. As Charlotte continues to play, Haru asks his father how things have been going. His father mentions how the queen hasn't appeared in public over the last few years, but he is glad there have been no more attempts on Charlotte's life. He has heard rumors that the queen wears a slave collar now, so he wonders if that has something to do with it. Haru is just glad everything is peaceful, and he thinks he can finally have a relaxing life as a shut-in, but his father suddenly mentions he will need to start going to school in the capital. Haru is shocked hearing this, and his father says he tried to refuse, but it was beyond his control. Haru instantly refuses, remembering how bad school was in his past life, and he becomes determined to find a way to get out of it. We see them discussing it further back at the house. His father reveals it was a direct recommendation from the king. Haru wonders why he would do such a thing, and his father thinks he must have made an impression on Princess Marianne when she came to visit them. His father thinks it would also be a good opportunity for him to meet people and see more of the outside world. Haru doesn't want to cause trouble for him, so he agrees to go. His father mentions he should bring an attendant since he is going to the capital, but he says he can't take Flay since she would end up causing trouble, and his mother suddenly appears, volunteering to go with him. But Haru refuses, saying nobody would be bringing their mother with them, and his father tells him he has 3 months to find someone. As Haru heads back to his room, he thinks of a way to get out of going. He explains the situation to his clone, but the clone also refuses, saying he also wants to be a shut-in. So Haru explains his plan, wanting his clone to get expelled from the academy for lack of ability, since it can't use any magic, and that way it won't cause any trouble for his father. His clone thinks he could do it himself, but Haru claims he might accidentally use his barrier magic if he is getting picked on. His clone doesn't want to get beaten up, so Haru promises to use his barrier on him to protect him, and his clone reluctantly agrees to the plan. We learn that over the last 5 years, Haru built a cabin somewhere far away, where he can be a shut-in while his clone covers for him. He relaxes playing video games, but Charlotte still comes to visit, so she can watch her favorite animes. She gets depressed wanting to watch more, because she can only visit with Flay since he is so far away, but Haru mentions he could use teleportation magic to help her. He shows it off, passing a ball to her through his barrier, and they are amazed that it works, but he notes he hasn't tested it on a living creature. Flay suggests trying it out with his clone, so he opens up a door to his room. He tells his clone to come through, but his clone knows what's up, refusing to risk his own life. He taunts Haru to try it himself, but Flay gets annoyed, and she jumps right through, grabbing the clone, and she throws him through. But after this test, they confirm that it works, so Haru installs a door for Charlotte to come and visit, but his clone heads back, just wanting to be left in peace. As Haru continues to relax, he suddenly remembers that he needs to find an attendant. He goes out for a walk, but he ends up at a village filled with skeletons. But they call him their boss, and it turns out they are the skeletons from 5 years ago, when he defeated the Queen Summoners. The leader of the skeletons, Johnny, welcomes him to the village. Haru notices that there are also other monsters, and Johnny explains that they took in strays who had nowhere to go, but he assures Haru that they are all well behaved. Johnny goes on to show Haru the other parts of their village, showing him their farms where they grow their food, and they have quite an impressive harvest, shocking Haru because they are doing all of this to feed the other monsters. Johnny keeps showing him other areas of the village, and Haru thinks that if he added flesh, Johnny could be a good attendant, but as he continues to talk about the village, Haru realizes he talks too much, and thinks he would go crazy if he had to listen to him every day. Haru takes his leave, and he tries to relax by the river, but we see the golem from 5 years ago is also there. It turns out to be a girl, and she has a crush on him, giving him a flower. Haru considers choosing her as his attendant, thinking she has a nice personality, but in the end, he thinks she is just too big. He returns to the cabin, where Flay wonders what he was talking about when he mentioned an attendant, but he tells her it's none of her business, which makes her depressed. The next day, Flay takes Charlotte to visit the village, and she is impressed her brother gave all the monsters a place to live. She decides to give the village a name, calling it Pandemonium, and Johnny thinks it's a great name. Meanwhile, in the distant frozen mountains, we see a group of adventurers hunting a blizzard dragon. They manage to injure it, causing it to fly away, but it ends up crashing down, and it gets swept away by the snow. Haru learns about this incident from his father, who tells him that the dragon appeared near their borders, and he worries it could enter their territory and go on a rampage, so he wants Flay to help investigate it. Flay says she only takes orders from Haru, but when Haru tells her to do it, She mentions that she doesn't know of any blizzard dragons, so she thinks it must be a coward that hid in the mountains while the demons were at war against humans, so she doesn't want to help someone like that. Haru asks for time to think about it, but when they leave the room, they see Charlotte was eavesdropping, and she feels bad for the dragon, asking Flay to help it, so Flay has no choice but to agree. They head into the mountains, and Haru manages to find the dragon. The dragon is in bad shape, and the adventurers have caught up to it, but Haru and Flay arrive just in time. Flay tries to burn them all with her fire, but Haru protects them just in time, leaving them on the ground. Haru tries to talk with the dragon, but it ignores him and asks Flay why a demon like her would serve a human. Flay explains her story for an hour, and the dragon is surprised Haru is the reincarnated demon king, but Haru can't believe Flay still remembers his story. The dragon apologizes for not helping out during the war, saying she doesn't like fighting, and explains that she has just spent the last 300 years living a quiet life in the mountains. Haru gets excited hearing this, thinking she lived the perfect lifestyle, and he wonders how she spent her days. She says she used to just sleep all day in a cave, but after meeting an adventurer who left a book behind, she would spend her time reading it over and over again. She eventually wanted to read other books, so she would transform into a human and sneak into a village where she could get books and take them back to her cave. But she was eventually discovered, and the adventurers ended up burning all of her books. Flay is brought to tears by the story, and she invites her to stay at the village. The dragon happily agrees, and she recognizes Haru as her master. She transforms into a human, and Haru quickly gives her some proper clothes. He removes his mask, introducing himself, and the girl doesn't have a name, so he decides to call her Liza. She is happy to receive this name, but Flay suddenly interrupts, reminding her who's boss, because she is Haru's first servant. Haru decides to head back, and Liza is able to fly after him, making Flay jealous, and she tries to keep up with them. Haru introduces Liza to his family, and his father is surprised he dealt with her so quickly. Haru asks for her to be able to stay as one of their maids, and his father doesn't mind as long as she follows the rules, while Charlotte is excited to meet her. Flay teaches Liza how to be a maid, showing how easily a broom can break, and telling her to be careful, but Liza manages to do a great job. They move on to washing dishes, and while Flay breaks every dish, Liza flawlessly cleans her dishes. They try cooking next, and Flay uses her fire, but that just ends up burning everything, while Liza learns from the other maids, and she is praised for learning so quickly, which makes Flay jealous. The family enjoys the food that Liza made, and they all compliment her on how good it tastes, making Flay depressed. Natalia wonders what else Liza can do, and she mentions she likes to read, which has helped her learn the fundamentals of magic. Natalia is impressed, and she suggests for her to be Charlotte's personal maid. The next day, we see Liza teaching Charlotte how to use magic. Charlotte struggles at first, but she manages to create a fire. Liza also helps her with her studies, and they start doing everything together. Charlotte quickly improves, and Haru is amazed seeing Liza teaching and doing laundry at the same time. Haru feels bad seeing her do their chores, and Charlotte worries she has been an inconvenience, but Liza says she has enjoyed serving her, and Charlotte asks her to also be her friend, which Liza happily agrees to. Haru thinks about how Liza is earnest and a quick learner, so he thinks she would make the perfect attendant for him, but he doesn't want to take her away from Charlotte after they just became friends. He thinks about it some more, and he realizes he could use his teleportation magic to allow Liza to be in two places at once. The next day, we see Charlotte in the yard, and Liza flies by. Flay claims she can also fly, so Charlotte asks her to teach her, but when Flay demonstrates her flying, it turns out she is just jumping, but Charlotte finds her amazing. Natalia wonders what they are doing, but she thinks flying magic would be too dangerous for Charlotte, making her depressed. Charlotte is about to cry, so Flay rushes to Haru, but he was watching everything, and he instantly creates a plane for Charlotte to fly in. Back at the cabin, Haru decides to check their levels, and we see that Flay and Liza are both fairly high level, but Haru is surprised when he sees Charlotte's max level is so high, remembering how the Queen's level was only 40. He thinks Charlotte will hit max level in no time, but she disagrees, revealing that when she was a baby, she made a fireball before she could even talk, so her mother ended up putting a seal on her. Charlotte wonders about Haru's level, and Flay thinks he must be over 100, but he refuses to show them since he knows he is only level 2. Later on, we see Charlotte becoming depressed because her favorite show has ended. Liza tells her it's time to go back, but as they leave, Haru mentions he is starting school in the capital. Charlotte suddenly thinks of it as a terrifying place, and she tells Liza to cancel her plans and summon her knights for an emergency meeting. We see her meeting with Flay, Johnny, and the Golem. They discuss Haru going to school, and Flay is shocked she didn't know about this. She thinks there's nothing Haru could learn at a school, since he's the Demon King, but Johnny reminds her they promised not to reveal his secret. Charlotte is shocked hearing this, wondering why Haru has a secret she doesn't know, but Johnny comforts her, saying she is Haru's favorite, so he will tell her in no time. They move on with the meeting, and Charlotte mentions a show she watched about a school, but when she asked Haru what a school is like, he calls it the most terrifying place on earth, so she wonders why he would willingly attend one. Based on the anime she watched, she comes up with a theory, thinking there must be a secret student council pulling the strings and corrupting the other students. She thinks it must be part of an even bigger evil syndicate, and Haru must be trying to infiltrate and stop them. Flay and Johnny are instantly sold on this theory, so Charlotte thinks they need to start preparing so they can help him. Liza suggests talking with Haru, but Charlotte says they shouldn't bother him with everything, saying they need to be able to think for themselves. Liza ends up reporting everything to Haru, and he is glad he heard about it before anything happened. Liza wonders if he's actually fighting against an evil syndicate, and he decides to play along, seeing it as his chance, and he asks for her help, telling her he will need her as his attendant when he goes to school. Liza is surprised by the request, but she agrees, thinking about what's at stake, and Haru starts brainstorming ways to get himself kicked out of the school as soon as possible. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.